All right. Hi, my name is Scott Arthur. I'm the Vice Chancellor for Advancement at the CU Anschutz Medical Campus, and thank you all for joining us today. These are definitely unprecedented times, and we decided that we would try to reach out to people during this time, mainly one, for connection. It can be pretty isolating at times, and two, just to talk about the great things that are happening at CU in terms of really having connection through philanthropy. I'm pretty excited for you guys to hear Jim Hodge and Colin Ware. They are experts in really planned giving and the spirit behind planned giving. So with that, enjoy your time with Jim and Colin.
Thank you, Scott. Let me welcome you all to Voting Your Values Through Philanthropy, the why and how of giving wisely. Next slide. The one before, maybe we could go back to our picture. Yeah, there. If you could pause on the picture a little bit. This is a picture of or a picture of me when the barbershops were open. And this is a picture of my colleague and friend all the time. So next slide, please. Before I get into what we're covered, let me add a good afternoon and welcome to our first virtual cocktail hour on giving wisely in challenging times, and frankly, at all times. Virtual cocktails for Colin and me, but we hope you're settling in with the libations of your choice. After all, you won't be driving or even wandering your neighborhoods for the next hour. We hope. This is a safe place. I prefer to call it drinking and thinking, where drinking is optional and come to think of it, thinking is optional too. Please use your Q&A buttons at the bottom of your screen to submit questions throughout the talk. We hope to be able to address those and have time at the end to do so. So let us begin, and cheers. A quick overview of what we will cover. I like to call it the preamble before the real ramble. So we're going to cover quickly today the evolutionary tendencies towards caring, sharing, and giving. The idea of the shift from material to spiritual thinking, and the whole foundation around values-driven philanthropy, and that means your values. We'll give some special consideration to COVID-19 as requested. Colin is an expert at choosing charities wisely and how to make giving easy and more impactful, and how to do gifts through your state. So next slide. So this is something, this is what I call a radical shift in thinking. Philanthropy is not about money. Philanthropy takes money, but money is a mere vehicle, merely a tool to vote your values, your highest hopes, based on your passions and your purpose in life. Next slide. So this is the veritable fork in the road. Two roads diverge into a wood. And we hope you'll take the one to the right, because we believe that philanthropy, or we'll also interchange caring and sharing, is about meaning in your life. It should not be a transaction, but rather a vision and purpose-driven action. So one of the questions we ask, next slide, please. Because this talk comes from the Anschutz Medical Campus, because after more than 40 plus years working in medical philanthropy, we thought we'd throw in a functional MRI image complementary in this study. Literally, they put people into functional MRIs, and then they asked them to be generous, to visualize making a gift. what scientists called acts of agency. And what they found in test after test was the portion of the brain, which you see lit up on the right-hand side, that lights up every time we care and share and give, is the joy center of the brain. And often we're called the boys of joy, but we really believe that philanthropy should be a joyful, positive experience. And when people experience joy, what do they want to do? And if you choose to submit your answer through the Q&A, we'll give you your test results later. Once people experience joy, what do they want to do? Next slide, please. So research is also telling us that we're hardwired to evolutionary care and share. Giving involves from the heart and from the head as well. In fact, hunting and gathering groups that were more caring and sharing had more offspring and actually lived longer. I think Darwin got a bad rap around survival of the fittest because he mentioned caring and sharing his for groups, for humans. In fact, if you can hazard a guess at this point, what is the #1 cardinal sin? What was the #1 cardinal sin in hunting and gathering groups? It's Gatorade, by the way. In fact, the cardinal sin was eating alone or hoarding. And if you can imagine at a time of sustainability, both of those were not helpful to the group. I think this is particularly poignant in this pandemic. I mean, there is absolutely no shame meant if your closets are jammed with toilet paper. But this is really what happens when humans switch to scarcity thinking. And our talk today is a shift to thinking in abundance. And now, next slide. And now the surprise bonus slide for you today. And the slide that answers the question, can money buy happiness? The soundbite answer is, well, yes and no. But on this slide, let me go through it. The vertical axis is fulfillment. You can replace that with happiness. The horizontal is money spent. And let's see, the first stop along the way. Thank you, Colin. I like that special effect there. The first stop, there's pretty good correlation between happiness and money spent. And this is when our basic needs, stage 1, when our basic needs and those of our families, the family's needs are met. And this correlates well with happiness. And just 15 years ago, when some of these studies were done, they even, economists and psychologists came up with a basic needs at about $75,000 a year. Now, we live in Denver, and that's just a little outdated. But keep in mind, there's high senses of happiness all around the world when basic needs are met. This is the work of psychologists Joan and Eric Erickson, and think about Maslow as we talk about this. So phase 2. Phase 2, yeah, it's 2 and 3, but that's okay. I like it. Phase 2 is a place called enough. And obviously this is an individual definition. Our enoughs differ. But at this time of isolation, it may be important to reevaluate the question, when is enough enough? what are the qualities of our needs versus the quantities of our wants. And the third blue dot up there is a place called luxuries, where we can actually afford whatever it is we want. And you notice the funny thing about bell curves. Now we're at the top of the roller coaster, and we're hovering at the apex. I think there's actually a word for it, but I can't come up with it right now. We're at the apex of the roller coaster here, and we can afford luxuries. And both economists and psychologists have studied this as well. This is a place where we think the third Lexus will make us happy. Or Colin, is it the third Lexi? It may be the third Lexi. Well, as soon as you drive that third Lexi off the sales lot, what happens? It economically depreciates 25%. And psychologists will tell you that the actual depreciation in happiness you expected to have with your third Lexi depreciates 25% as well. So this is a no shame presentation. There's no shame here if you have 3 Lexi in your garages and if you have closets full of toilet paper. We're giving forgiveness throughout the presentation. And we shouldn't be ashamed. Life is to enjoy as we can and as we should. So to the next point, this is the downward slope. And a real inflection point in all of our lives, according to Erickson, Maslow, and thousands of positive psychologists and self-help gurus for that matter. We arrive at a stage of abundance. However you have defined that term. I don't know what the purpose of life is except to pass each other along, which Erickson calls generativity, to supporting and passing along the next generation. And it doesn't have to be through philanthropy. Let me make that really clear. It can be in other ways. We all put aside our own personal dreams in life, and sometimes we never pick them up again. And by the way, during this time of thinking and reflection and isolation, this may be a wonderful time to pick up something you've always wanted to learn, or to pick up some of those dreams deferred. But I'll tell you, giving a talk similar to this, I had the most wonderful conversation with a person afterwards, and they had a 13-year-old son, and he wanted to be a drummer, and he desperately wanted a drum set, and the parents couldn't afford it. So in swoops the grandparents, and they buy the grandson the drum set. And the beautiful ending to this story is the parents decided to move the drum set to the grandparents' house so that they could bond better together. So there are other ways to fulfill the dreams of others. And Eric and Joan Erickson say this is how we actually move up to a place called integrity, or what Maslow calls self-fulfillment. What I like to call arriving before you depart. Next slide, please. So wait, I don't know if I summarized. Can you buy your way to happiness through things? Absolutely not. Psychiatrists call it the hedonic treadmill. The more and more you have, the more and more you want. But by fulfilling the dreams of others, by caring and sharing, by philanthropy, you can indeed come to a place of integrity. Next slide, Colin. So this is what I call the shift, the material to spiritual shift. At the end of life, when we do what psychologists call life reviews, ultimate concerns rise in our value hierarchy. Next slide. So this is Erickson at his and her best, this is the choice, that reflection point I was talking to you about. This is the choice we have. We can either rise to generativity and make our lives a gift, or we can become more and more self-absorbed and stagnate. Use your Q&A buttons if you're so inspired. If you know people who become ever concentrated versions of their own worst selves, they stagnate. Hoarders of things and attention. What words come to mind when you think of such individuals? And no names, please. Don't share any names at this point. But it might be something to think about, because again, in these times, who are the people that give you energy? Who are the people you want to gravitate to? These are people who are constant learners, who are always fresh regardless of their age. People who stop learning have a great tendency to stagnate. So this is a chance to recalibrate, ask the question, what is essential and important in our lives? And I would say instructors and soul models are playing this out all over our campus and in every hospital and in every ambulance and in every police car in America and throughout the world. Heroes are showing up, sacrifices are being made. This is a chance to re-examine our values, reset them, how we want to care and share with others. A time to shift from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. In the words of David Brooks, and I quote, "Are you adding to your resumes and to your bank accounts, or are you painting your eulogies through your lives?" How can you help in these times? What are the best ways to help? And now I'm not going to break into, if we could go back to that one. Colin, you want me to break into prose or poetry or?
Absolutely.
Okay, I won't break into song. You're spared from that. But this is a poem from R.L. Sharp, the favorite Australian poet of Princess Di. And it goes, "Isn't it strange that princes and kings and clowns that caper in sawdust rings and you and me are builders for eternity? Each is given a set of rules, an uncut block, a bag of tools, and each shall fashion, ere life has flown, a stumbling block or stepping stone." And we think through caring and sharing, and we think through philanthropy, that carving stepping stones for the next generation is a beautiful thing to contemplate. So, you know, we kind of looked at who was stagnating. You should also think right now of those soul models in your life and jot a couple of words that come to mind when you're with them. And also, this is the perfect time to grab onto an attitude of gratitude and try to write one note per day to someone who lifted you up, believed in you, cared about you, trusted you, a teacher, a mentor, whomever. Send that note of gratitude, which is bi-directional. It lifts the person and it also increases your sense of well-being. So, all right. We were asked specifically to address giving in a pandemic. And of course, we won't ask anyone's ages, but I'm pretty sure this is a brand new experience to the people who are online right now. And so let's go through these, and later I'll thank one of my dear friends who wrote most of this. So point number one, give locally. Unlike natural disasters, earthquakes, hurricanes, this pandemic is every place based. The best place to start is in our own communities, where we're most familiar with the needs. Give more to nonprofits you already know. You can see the the theme repeating. How are they responding to COVID? How do they generally use your money wisely? I like to call it investment-worthy nonprofits by your definition. Support newly created funds that are specifically responding to the pandemic. Again, locally, preferred if you know the organization, particularly hospitals you've seen struggling around the world and around the country. That's the way to go with this. And then, next slide, please. If you know these organizations, you've already given to these organizations, Colin will talk a little more about this, but I ask you to trust the nonprofit you choose to spend the funds. This is not like the old days of giving a grant and expecting some kind of stewardship of how the money was spent a year later. We're finding on the Anschutz Medical Campus that things are changing, not every week, but by the hour or by the half hour. So money given unrestricted allows the people on the front lines to apply the money where the need is greatest. And also dig deep. I always say, you know, you've all heard give till it hurts, which I don't quite understand, but I would say give till it feels good and not till it hurts. And so often we think about making charitable gifts through the checkbook, through our checkbooks. Colin will speak to this. Broaden that frame of reference and think about other assets. When you go, I love Lynn Quist. She wrote a great book. Gosh, I'll think of the name. She said, when you let go of trying to get more, what you really don't need, it opens up oceans of energy to make a difference with what you have. And I'll give you the book title later. So the big ending to my portion of this webinar is, when you have a why for caring and sharing and giving, you can always figure out the how. All of your giving should be based on a reconfirmed foundation of your values around your personal values clarification efforts, exercises around your passions. Then vote your values through your philanthropy. So that was the essential why to giving. And now I'll segue to Colin, whom I consider a grand master of gift planning.
Thank you.
Deity in the pantheon of philanthropy, colleague and friend.
In the second half of the presentation, I'm going to talk about how to choose good organizations and how to make gifts efficiently and effectively. What you heard from Jim is choose organizations that are delivering outcomes to your community that match your values, that you want to see spread throughout the culture and the society. And they may be values you yourself can't do on your own, so you need help doing it. A great example is research. I can't cure cancer, but I can certainly give money to a researcher here or at Children's or at National Jewish who's working to cure cancer. So what I want to talk about, though, is once you have those ideas set, how do you choose effective organizations? Who do you choose who to support and to put your money into to make your gifts? So what do we mean by effective? So when you evaluate a nonprofit, ask yourself a simple question. Is this the best one to achieve my philanthropic goals? As Jim said, think like an investor. Will this organization give me the best return on my money? These are questions you might want to ask and research when you're looking at nonprofits. Are the programs impactful? And is there evidence to show that the nonprofit is driving change? If the answer to this is no, be cautious. Clearly, some organizations are pioneering new solutions to problems, but some are also simply not competent. They may be motivated from very good places of wanting to make the world a better place, but they may simply be not good enough at it to have an impact. Financial stability is also important because an organization has to be around long enough to have impact. Debt is problematic in nonprofits and can affect financial stability. It can signal a lack of financial management skills and possibly an inability to mount sustainable fundraising efforts, thus bringing their whole financial future into question. So too can high overhead. It may result from poor leadership, a lack of financial management skills, and it may even indicate that the nonprofit is really a scam and is not really trying to do good. Finally, organizations with strong, motivated volunteer leadership boards tend to accomplish their goals far more frequently than those without. Obviously, we don't want to support organizations that don't spend the majority of their budgets on programs. This can be complicated. It's not possible to apply a universal standard. So approach these topics with skepticism and an open mind. Below are 2 guidelines that provide a good starting point for you. But remember, there may be good reasons for organizations to be outside of them. Different missions, for example, drive different overhead cost structures. Land trusts are a good example. They have significant overhead because mostly what they do is land deals, manage investment funds, raise money, and write legal documents. An internal social service organization might have more overhead than a local one because of the complexities of managing overseas operations. Just because they have more overhead doesn't mean they're less effective than the local organization. And this is true for fundraising as well. Achieving a 10% cost of fundraising requires a successful face-to-face major gifts program. In fundraising, you reduce your costs of fundraising much more by increasing the size of your gifts than you do cost cutting. And it can take years, especially for smaller nonprofits, to build a successful major gifts program. And you often have to spend more establishing that program than maintaining it, especially if you don't have a large base of strongly affiliated supporters who also have financial capacity. And what I'm talking about here, think about the difference between the alumni of the CU Anschutz medical campus and their potential to support, and the clients of a homeless organization and their potential to support. Clearly, the homeless organization is going to have to look for donors, and they're going to have to look much more in many more places, and it's a much more challenging task for them. So use these numbers as a starting point, but then get to know the organizations you want to support and get to know their cost structures. Figure out if you are comfortable with the expenses that they're spending, and if they are, feel free to move forward. This slide is pretty self-explanatory. Seek out organizations with respected volunteer leaders, administrators that are qualified to run the organization, and program leaders who have the right credentials and experience to actually get the job done. In the nonprofit field, a desire to do good is not good enough. Skill and experience matter just as much, if not more, as they do in for-profit businesses. Talk a little bit about revenue. Nonprofits have 4 primary sources of revenue, which are on the slide. You might be surprised to see earned income on this list, but many organizations have services that they charge for. Ticket sales in the arts is a good example. Hospital bills are another. The most important thing as a donor to look for when you're looking at a nonprofit is for a healthy mix of all of these sources. And when you're looking at donations, a thriving individual gift program is probably the most important. Almost 70% of all gifts come from individuals nationwide, and that number is higher if you count gifts out of donor-advised funds. Nonprofits that do not invest in individual giving are competing for a far smaller pool of money and are far less likely to be successful and stable in the long term. Also be wary of organization with a reliance on 1 or 2 or 3 large donors, whether they be individuals, foundations, or companies. They may change their mind, leaving that organization in a very, very precarious state. Foundations in particular tend not to be reliable over long periods of time as a source of revenue, as their priorities change as society evolves. These are some resources that you can use when you're evaluating nonprofit. GuideStar, the Better Business Bureau, Charity Navigator, they're all very good places to start. But never hesitate to ask for more information from a charity. Audited financials available from the nonprofit directly, and IRS Form 990s available through GuideStar give you a wealth of data on supporters, leadership, board giving, etc. And remember what I said earlier. Approach this with skepticism, but approach it with an open mind. So now that you've chosen a nonprofit, let's discuss how to give. Making giving simple and regular is one of the best ways to have impact. And here are 3 ways to make giving simple. Use payroll deduction if possible. Every paycheck you make is a gift. Well, every paycheck you make a gift. And if you don't see the money first, you probably won't miss it. If you can't use payroll deduction, set up regular gifts with your bank's online payment systems. And if you support a lot of organizations, consider a donor-advised fund with a local community foundation or through investment companies like Schwab, Fidelity, and Vanguard. Donor-advised funds allow you to make a large gift upfront into the fund, take a tax deduction for that gift, and then distribute the gifts to nonprofits as you see fit. It's simple, and growth in this kind of giving has exploded in the last 10 years. And one of the things we've seen with COVID-19 is that companies like Fidelity and Schwab have seen hundreds of millions of dollars taken out of those donor-advised funds and put into COVID-19 funding. That's immediate impact to try to fight this pandemic. This is probably one of the most important things that folks who are making major gifts learn, is that don't give cash, give appreciated assets. Giving appreciated assets like stocks, real estate, even mineral rights is by far the most efficient way to give. You get 2 tax benefits when you give an appreciated asset. First of all, no capital gains are imposed on the gift of an appreciated asset when that asset is transferred to a charity, a qualified nonprofit organization. Second, you also get an income tax deduction for the fair market value of that asset. So if you don't need all that Apple stock you bought in the 1990s, giving some of it to charity is one of the most effective and efficient ways to make a gift. It dramatically reduces the actual cost to make that gift, and it may allow you to make a larger gift and have more impact. So once you've decided to make a gift, it's very, very wise to ask the question, how am I going to make the gift and what asset am I going to use? Because appreciated assets can deliver significant benefits.
Colin, if
Yes.
If I may add to that, one of the questions I often ask individuals when they're considering a gift of significance, and that's defined by you, what a gift of significance is are you planning on selling anything now or in the next year? That opens up the mind to what other assets do I have other than just a checkbook?
Well, and that's really important to have that conversation before you sell rather than after you sell, because once you've sold an appreciated asset, you can't wind back the clock and instead change your mind and give it away, and thus you're going to have to pay those capital gains taxes. So if you're selling an apartment building or if you're taking your company public, you should probably talk to your financial advisors. If you're philanthropic, there may be ways to manage capital taxes before the sale by making donations of those assets to a charity.
Or an undivided interest in a portion of the assets before.
That's exactly right. And the University of Colorado Foundation is set up to take those kinds of gifts, and many nonprofits use the local community foundation community to make those gifts possible. So that's something that we're all capable of doing. The IRA Charitable Rollover is one of my favorite ways to make a gift. It's one of the smartest as well. But once you reach 70.5 years of age, you can direct money out of your retirement account directly to a charity. No taxes are taken out. It does not count as income on your tax return, and it counts towards your RMD. And you can do it up to $100,000 a year, every single year. So if you don't need your IRA for living expenses, this is one of the most efficient ways to give, and one of the only ways to take money out of an IRA without paying taxes on it. You want to say something, Jim?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question. And we try not to focus on the negative, but can you talk one sentence about how retirement accounts are given to kids are not the best idea?
Yeah, I'm going to come to that in another slide, but
okay, well, wait.
Yeah.
All right.
So we also wanted to include a slide on charitable gift annuities. With the current market volatility and low interest rates, charitable gift annuities, also known as CGAs, are particularly attractive right now. And they're a simple way to make a planned gift. You make a donation to a nonprofit that offers them, you sign a 2-page contract, the nonprofit contracts to give you payments for the rest of your life based on a percentage of that initial gift. Those payments are guaranteed. The amount does not change no matter what happens in the market. Pass away, what remains comes to the charity. Half of the initial gift to the nonprofit. These are the rates on the slide that CU is offering right now. And yes, even at these rates, 9% if you're 90 years old, they meet that 50% standard. CGAs are a very, very good way to make a significant gift, but also give yourself some comfort by taking income every single year. So an estate gift is often the largest gift a person ever makes. Requests are powerful. They allow you to take care of your family first and then leave whatever remains to charity. Requests are flexible. They're also revocable. So if your priorities change, you can always change your plans. Beneficiary designations on retirement accounts, IRAs, and real estate are also the easiest way to make a bequest. And they offer the benefit of being outside of probate when you pass away. And they do not require a lawyer to either establish or to distribute the gifts. Finally, if you're planning on giving in your will, gifts of real estate are a great way to reduce the work and hassle of closing your estate. Transferring the property in your will from your estate to a charity and having them sell it and put that money to work to advance their mission takes that burden off of your heirs and gives them one less thing they have to do at a time that's very stressful and there is a lot of work on the folks who are closing the estate. Okay, now I'm going to get to Jim's statement. I always point this out in just about every talk that I give because many people don't know this. IRAs are not included in the estate tax, gift tax exemption. And for everybody, just a quick recap, every person is allowed a $12 million estate tax and gift tax exemption. A couple's allowed $24 million. And what that means is that if your estate is under that, no matter who you give it to, there will be no estate taxes imposed on that. IRAs are not included in that category. So anyone inheriting an IRA, whether it's your child, your spouse, a friend, as long as it's a person, must pay taxes when they take money out of it. And it will be taxed as ordinary income, and that can hurt. So worse yet, the Secure Act passed earlier this year took away the stretch IRA. Previously, if you inherited an IRA, you could withdraw the funds over your lifetime. Now you have just 10 years to withdraw the money. So if you're leaving a large IRA to somebody, you can see that the potential tax liability is going to be significant. Withdrawals can push the recipient into higher tax brackets, and they can also increase Medicare taxes. They might also lead to having to pay alternative minimum tax. It's not uncommon for withdrawals from large IRAs to be taxed as much as 40%. So there's only one way to get money out of an IRA tax-free. Give it to charity, either with a rollover, which we discussed a few slides earlier, or as a bequest to charity. So if you're going to make gifts with your estate, if you're going to be charitable, look to your IRA first and give your family and friends assets that have already been taxed, because those assets fall under the estate tax exemption and they will be able to take them and there will be no taxes imposed on that. So in short, If you're going to be charitable, don't give your IRA to your kids, give them something else. So I'm just going to sum up real quick here, and then we're going to open up for questions. So thank you for joining us today. We covered a lot of ground. Jim talked about values-driven philanthropy, how to find joy in your giving and how to let joy guide you in your giving, and how to have impact now, the most impact now during this health crisis. I talked about how to choose effective organizations and how to make choices in your giving that increase benefits to both to you and the organizations you support. And there are a couple common themes through both of Jim's and mine's presentation. I think the most important is approach your giving, especially if you're giving significantly, like an investor. Ask the question, is this organization the very best organization to accomplish what I want to accomplish? Are they my money to the best use? And are they the ones that's most likely to have a powerful and impactful outcome with that money that I've given them? And those are really at the root of what I discussed early in my part of the talk about how you vet nonprofits, how you look at them, and how you choose how to support them. And I'll close by saying that if you're going to give significant sums of money, get to know the people in that organization. Get to know important leadership volunteers, get to know the executive director, get to know the folks who are doing what I do for a living as a fundraiser and what Jim does. And do your research and go with your gut. Does this organization feel like it's going to be the one that's going to bring the joy and change into the world? So,
to reinforce investment worthy. So we use ROI on our investments, return on investment. Some of us in the work in philanthropy use ROI as well, return on impact or return as impact. And to reinforce what Colin just said, who's going to deliver the impact? The number one reason people stop making major gifts to nonprofits is they feel removed from the impact. And that involves organizations that are very good will steward your gift and give you reports.
So we have our first question, and I'm going to take a shot at answering it. The question is, can I give a Roth IRA? You can. The answer is yes, but it's probably one of the least tax advantageous assets to give to charity because you have already paid taxes on the money in that Roth IRA. And any gain that you've earned on that money in that Roth is going to come out to you tax-free. So you're probably better off giving away an asset that is an appreciated asset because you're going to be liable for capital gains on that asset if you don't give it to charity. Do we have other questions? I'm happy to sit here for a few minutes and respond to folks would like to throw some queries up on the board. So the second question is minimum required to start a donor advised fund? I honestly don't know.
I don't either, but in my experience, I don't think there necessarily is, particularly if you're going through, check with Fidelity. If you work, whatever organization you work with, frankly, 40 years ago, we kind of laughed when Fidelity offered, I mean, can you imagine, they were offering these donor advised funds. But when you think about it, whom have you trusted as a stockbroker or an advisor or an attorney? And so setting up these funds was a natural extension of a relationship of trust they had with these people. So now they're the largest, I think, they're the largest charitable funds in the world.
And if anybody does know the answer to that, just post it in the question and we will share it with everybody. I love this question. We just as well. What happens to funds in a donor advised fund when the donor dies? Something that the nonprofit community and folks who advocate for the nonprofit community in Washington, D.C. are concerned about, because many people have no directive to their donor advised fund about what happens when they pass away. And I don't want to talk disparagingly about the financial industry, the Schwabs, the Fidelities of the world, but they also, unlike when you fill out an IRA and you get the beneficiary designation as probably the second thing you see on the screen when you're opening an IRA, you have to ask the donor advised fund for a beneficiary designation form or an instruction form to distribute your donor advised fund when you pass away. So there are two answers here. You can request a form that gives directions to spend out that donor advised fund in any way that you want over any period of time that you want after you pass away. If you do not provide those instructions, that money is going to sit with the donor advised fund and they are going to give away gifts based on your previous giving, essentially in perpetuity. So if you haven't set up instructions with your donor advised fund about what happens when you pass away, it would probably be a good thing to ask your financial advisor, and it might be a very good thing to ask the company that's managing your donor advised fund. This is going to be a real issue. This is going to be a real issue in the next 20 or 30 years. And there is real concern over that.
And Laura, thanks for weighing in that you believe many of these funds have a minimum of 5K, and each community foundation sets their own minimum. So as Colin has said, and as Laura says, you just have to check.
Yeah, and I'm going to give just a plug to local community foundations for the simple reason that it's easy to talk to a person. It's very easy to get to a gift officer or an investment officer. And if you have concerns, you can go sit down and have coffee with them, unlike Fidelity, where you're going to be in talking to somebody in a massive phone room. So if you like the more personal approach, any community foundations can provide access for the donor advised funds that they have. And we just got another attendee who shared that the minimum to set up a donor advised fund at the Denver Foundation is $10,000. Are there other questions? Okay. Well, I'm going to pass it off to Kara. I'm going to talk about the other presentations in this series.
Thanks so much for your attendance and attention.
Yep. Thank you very much. Kara? Okay. Kara may have had child care.
I'm here.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, I was trying but having some technical issues. I just wanted to thank you both so much for doing this for us. We really appreciate everything we learned tonight, and we're so proud to have you as colleagues in our office. We're clearly amongst experts, so thank you again for this. And thank you all of you for attending. We will hope to see you at our May 13th Happy and Healthy, which focuses on burnout in the healthcare profession and features Dr. Paul Minkin and Dr. Amy McDivitt. So thank you again so much for coming. And oh, Colin, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to say one thing. We as fundraisers are not allowed to give financial or tax advice, direct financial or tax advice. So if you are thinking about making a gift or something we said today is inspiring you to want to make a difference someplace in our community, please check in with your own financial advisor and your own tax advisors. There are many, many ways to make a gift. Everybody's situation is different. And we would hate for you to leave a benefit to you on the table just because you didn't know that it was available.
Great. Thank you so much, Colin. So thanks again to both of you. Thank you to everyone for joining. And we have several more of these lined up, including our next one, May 13th, for burnout in the healthcare profession. And after that, it's the positive outcome of human and animal relationships on May 27th. So thank you again, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you all.